The first sound wasn't the slap. It was the hush that followed, so complete the ventilation seemed to hesitate, as if Astarion Spire itself didn't dare inhale. General Amina Kadim stood beneath blue-white light, her white combat suit stark against the Council's polished metal. Lens drones hovered in a slow orbit, red diodes blinking. The amphitheater rose in tiers, emissaries in ceremonial armor, robed clerks with crystal tablets, and alien counselors whose eyes never blinked quite right. On the highest dais, Emperor Regent Zyron Valkar lounged as though gravity belonged to him. His skin was cobalt, his crown a jagged band of gold. Bronze-gilded armor wrapped his torso in ancient motifs, serpents, stars, the Dominion's founding wars. Agenda Item 3, intoned a herald. The Oath of Harmonious Compliance. Memberworld terror is to affirm integration by surrendering autonomous fleet command and accepting Dominion custodianship. Ceremony for them. A choke chain for her. Amina stepped forward until the floor's mirror sheen caught the white of her suit and the imperial banners behind her. She kept her hands open. Cameras loved open hands. Open hands looked harmless. Regent Valkar, she said. Humanity will not sign. A ripple moved through the chamber. Even the translators seemed to pause. Zyron's smile arrived like poison. General, he purred. You misunderstand. This is not negotiation. It is correction. By the Treaty of Joining, Amina replied, a member world retains defensive autonomy unless a tri-species consent vote is recorded. You don't have that vote. A few councillors glanced down at their tablets, pretending to verify what they already knew. Zyron lifted 2 fingers. The holographic star emblems along the wall brightened. Ah, the human devotion to paper. He leaned forward. You stand on my dais and cite clauses as if you have equals here. At the edge of the delegation platform, Lieutenant Juno Reyes stood rigid, jaw locked. Her thumb tapped once against her thigh. Recording is live, uplink stable. Zyron rose. He was taller than the projections suggested. He descended the dais, armor whispering. The drones tightened their circle. A vassal species, Zyron said, letting the phrase drift through translators with deliberate contempt, does not refuse. A vassal species learns obedience. And when it fails. His hand reached out, broad and blue, and closed on Amina's jaw. The chamber froze in trained stillness. Dominion law treated public touch as punctuation. A ruler's hand could bless. A ruler's hand could brand. The slap landed with a sharp crack, caught by microphones that had never been turned off. Amina's head turned slightly. A strand of dark hair slipped loose and clung to her cheek. Heat bloomed beneath her skin. Pain arrived, quick and clean, followed by the deeper ache of humiliation delivered to an audience of worlds. Zyron kept his hand there a heartbeat longer, fingers pressing as if he could push the refusal out through her teeth. Now, he said softly, kneel. Amina did not move. When she spoke, her voice wasn't louder. It didn't need to be. It carried because every listener leaned in. Under ceremonial law, she said, a ruling hand that strikes a sworn commander in session declares trial of blood. The words hit the room like a dropped blade. Some councillors flinched. Others went perfectly still. In the tiers, a reptilian delegate's throat sac pulsed. Fear or excitement, hard to tell. Juno's eyes widened for half a second, then narrowed. That clause. The old one. The one the Dominion pretended to forget. Zyron laughed, but the sound cracked in the middle. Obsolete, he scoffed. You think antiques bind me? Amina stepped closer, closing the distance he expected her to widen. Her gaze flicked to the drones, then to the witness seals glowing along the chamber's edge. It binds you, she said, because you're on record. Because your witnesses are present. Because you chose violence as law. Zyron's nostrils flared. Pride did what strategy could not. It made him answer the wrong challenge. Very well, he snarled, loud now, feeding the broadcast. Let the galaxy watch you fail. Amina moved. Not with fury. With training. Her left hand snapped up to his wrist, locking it against her shoulder plate. Her right forearm drove into the hinge of his elbow, hard, precise, using the armor's own articulation against him. She pivoted, hips turning, and the regent's balance vanished. For a heartbeat, the crown hovered above them, absurdly delicate. Then Xiron crashed to the floor. His head struck the lip of the dais step, stone-hard composite, at the exact angle Amina had chosen. The sound was duller than the slap, heavier, final. His crown bounced once and rolled, clattering toward the center of the chamber like a coin deciding a fate. Silence returned, thicker than before. Amina stood over him, chest rising once, twice. She could feel every drone locked on her, every judge an opportunist and coward watching the human general who had just rewritten a ritual with her hands. A security captain started forward. Amina lifted one palm, stop, and looked past him to the counselors who mattered. This, she said, voice steady, is not rebellion. Her eyes flicked to Xiron's fallen crown, then back to the chamber. This is your law. An alarm tone began, low, mournful, rolling through the spire. Lights shifted from council blue to funeral violet. Bulkheads slid into place with a sound like a planet sealing its atmosphere. Morning lock. Juno leaned close, whispering without moving her lips. All channels are still live. They're trying to seal uplinks. Amina kept her face composed for the cameras that would never forget her expression. Then let them, she murmured. The story's already out. We will be heard today. Above, alien delegates stared at the regent's body as if it might rise by tradition alone. None of them spoke. No one knew which script to follow. Amina turned slowly, letting the entire chamber see her reddened cheek. Not a trophy. Not a weakness. Proof. She faced the sealed doors as security drones descended like metallic insects. And she smiled, small, human, unafraid. Proceed, she told them. You've declared the trial. Now finish it. The doors sealed with a sound like a held breath finally released. Morning lock did not mean silence. It meant control. Purple light washed the council chamber as security drones settled into a hovering grid, lenses rotating, weapons dormant but visible. The body of Emperor-Regent Xiron Valkar had already been removed, efficient, reverent, discreet. Only the absence remained, and the crown, which no one dared touch. General Amina Kadim stood between two lines of Dominion guards, her hands unbound but watched. That, too, was a message. We are calm, we are magnanimous. Empires always pretended restraint after violence failed them. Across the chamber, a figure stepped forward to occupy the regent's shadow. Chancellor Vorun Sable was not imposing. He was tall without bulk, blue-skinned but pale, his armor smooth and modern, designed to suggest inevitability rather than strength. His eyes were sharp in a way Xiron's never were. General Kadim, Vorun said, voice clear, practiced for chambers and cameras. You are safe. For now. Amina inclined her head the barest fraction. I appreciate the clarification. A murmur rippled through the delegates. Vorun let it settle before continuing. The Dominion recognizes that emotions ran high, he said. However, the death of a regent cannot be dismissed as ritual enthusiasm. This council will convene an emergency tribunal to determine whether your actions constitute lawful trial of blood or premeditated assassination. Juno Reyes felt the shift immediately. Language. They weren't denying the law yet. They were preparing to bend it. Amina met Vorun's gaze. Then convene it publicly. A flicker crossed his eyes. Transparency is admirable, he replied smoothly, but security considerations require silence, Amina finished. Or truth escapes. Several delegates looked away. A few did not. Vorun smiled. You mistake our concern. We wish to protect your people from misinterpretation. By controlling the broadcast, Amina said. No. The word landed cleanly. Vorun studied her for a long moment, then spread his hands. Very well. The tribunal will be recorded. Selectively. Amina turned slightly toward the chamber. The trial of blood requires witness and record, she said. Selective recording invalidates it. The word invalidates carried weight. Treaties died on less. Before Vorun could respond, a chime echoed through the hall. A robed figure stepped from the archive alcove, thin, stooped, skin the color of ash. Archivist Monk Sal Rhine inclined his head to the council, then to Amina. The law remains as spoken, he said, voice dry as old paper. Amendments require unanimous repeal. No such repeal is logged. Vorun's jaw tightened. For the first time, impatience slipped through. Thank you, Archivist, he said. You are dismissed. Rhine did not move. By tradition, Rhine replied, an archive recitation may be requested by the accused. The general has standing. Amina didn't look at him, but she felt the shift, an opening measured in inches, but inches mattered. I request it, she said. The chamber reacted in fragments, a sharp intake of breath, a whispered curse, the faint whine of a drone adjusting focus. Vorun nodded once. So be it. The recitation will occur. His eyes hardened. In time. Time. Always time. The guards escorted Amina and the human delegation through corridors that curved like ribs. Mourning banners unfurled as they passed, ceremonial grief prepackaged and precise. The holding wing was immaculate. White walls, gravity softened, surveillance obvious. When the doors sealed behind them, Juno exhaled for the first time since the slap. That clause, she said quietly. I knew it existed. I didn't know you'd use it. Amina finished, sitting. The chair adjusted to her weight automatically. I hoped I wouldn't have to. Juno paced once, then stopped. They're spinning already. Secondary feeds are delayed. Dominion channels are framing it as tragic necessity. Amina touched her cheek. The ache had dulled to a reminder. Let them talk. What matters is what they can't erase. She looked up as a soft knock preceded the door sliding open. Ambassador Nerek of Keth entered, flanked by a single guard who stayed well back. Nerek's skin bore the ridged texture of his people, eyes dark and reflective. You have broken something, he said without preamble. Amina met his gaze. Or revealed it. Nerek inclined his head. My world has paid tribute for 3 generations. Each year, the number rises. Each year, the council applauds its own restraint. His voice lowered. If the archive recitation proceeds unaltered, others will listen. If, Juno echoed. Nerek smiled thinly. Empires fear if more than guns. He left as quietly as he had come. Hours passed without clocks. Meals arrived untouched. Messages flickered and vanished as Dominion filters tightened. Somewhere beyond the hull, fleets repositioned. Then the summons came. The tribunal chamber was smaller, older. Stone replaced alloy. The air carried the faint scent of incense and dust. The archive dais dominated the room, its surface etched with clauses older than the Dominion's crown. Vorun stood at its edge, composed again. General Kadim, he said. Before the recitation begins, the Dominion offers clemency. Amina folded her hands. For what crime? Public disorder, Vorun replied. You will acknowledge excess force, express regret, and accept ceremonial censure. Your people retain partial autonomy. You live. And if I refuse? Vorun's smile didn't reach his eyes. Then the law will take its course. Amina leaned forward slightly. You mean your version of it? Silence stretched. Vorun straightened. Last chance. She shook her head once. You don't understand humans, she said. We don't kneel to survive. We stand so others can. Vorun turned sharply. Begin the recitation. Archivist Monk Rhine stepped forward. His voice filled the chamber, measured, relentless. Ceremony Law, Volume 3, Article 17, Trial of Blood. The words unfurled like a blade drawn slowly from a sheath. Witness. Assault. Consent by act. Immediate challenge. Binding outcome. As the clause echoed through the chamber, something shifted beyond its walls. On a distant docking ring, a Dominion fleet commander received a sealed order marked priority. Pacification preparation. And across 1,000 systems, listeners leaned closer. Because law, once spoken aloud, could not be unheard. The archive recitation did not end when the last clause was spoken. It began. The chamber held its breath as Archivist Monk Ryan's voice faded into silence. Stone walls absorbed the words, storing them the way empires feared most, not as records, but as permission. Chancellor Vorun Sable did not move for several seconds. When he did, it was with deliberate calm, as if restraint itself were a weapon. "The law has been read," he said. "Context, however, remains under review." Amina Kadim straightened. "The law does not require your comfort." A ripple of restrained reaction passed through the chamber. A delegate from the Reelan clade shifted, crest feathers lifting. Another, scaled, heavyset, tapped a claw against the floor in a slow, thoughtful rhythm. Vorun's gaze swept the room. "Trial of blood," he said evenly, "is a relic. Designed to curb tyrants in an era before interstellar governance. To invoke it now is inconvenient," Amina said. "Not invalid." Vorun's eyes flicked to her. "You killed a regent." "I answered an assault," she replied. "On record. Under witness." Ryan inclined his head. "The distinction is precise." Vorun exhaled through his nose. "Archivist, you forget your place." Ryan's voice did not waver. "I remember it." Outside the chamber, the Dominion moved. Juno Reyes watched the feeds from the holding wing, fingers dancing across a slate patched through 3 redundant relays. Dominion networks throttled public channels, but civilian mirrors had already spawned: miners, traders, archivists, anyone who'd caught the moment before the filters dropped. "Secondary broadcasts are holding," she murmured. "They're trying to drown it in commentary." Amina did not look away from the chamber floor projected on the screen. "Then we don't shout. We wait." Waiting was not passivity. Waiting was control. A tone chimed, sharp, urgent. A fleet status alert forced its way onto Juno's display. "Dominion 3rd Pacification Group," Juno said quietly. "Mobilizing from Vera orbit." Amina's jaw tightened. "They're skipping the verdict. They're preparing a lesson." The lesson had a name: Harmonization Strike. Every world in the Dominion knew what it meant. Ships arrived under banners of order. Cities burned with surgical precision. Survivors signed whatever was placed in front of them. In the tribunal chamber, Vorun clasped his hands behind his back. "The council will recess," he announced. "Security concerns require." Amina stepped forward. The sound of her boots echoed once. "Clean. Final." "No," she said. The word cracked through the chamber harder than the slap ever had. Vorun turned, irritation bleeding through his polish. "General, you are no longer a participant. You are an exhibit." Amina met his stare. "Then exhibit your law. On record. Or admit it's a costume." The chamber erupted, not in noise, but in motion. Delegates leaned together. Subchannel lights blinked as private conversations ignited. Ambassador Nerek rose from his seat. "My world recognizes the recitation," he said. "We request that proceedings continue." A Reelan delegate followed. Seconded. Another voice, hesitant but clear, thirded. Vorun's eyes narrowed. He counted quickly, and realized, too late, that silence no longer meant obedience. "This is disorder," he snapped. "This is governance," Amina replied. Before Vorun could respond, the chamber lights flickered. A new feed forced itself onto the central display, unofficial, grainy, civilian. A human ship filled the screen. Scarred hull. Coalition markings faded but intact. A voice cut through, calm, professional. "This is Captain Elias Morgan of the TCS Resolute. Dominion Fleet, you have issued weapons lock warnings against civilian traffic. We are interposing." The image widened. Human ships slid into formation, not aggressive, not retreating. Simply there. Vorun turned sharply to a comm officer. "Why is this live?" The officer swallowed. "They're rebroadcasting through open trade relays. Cutting it would shut down half the ring." On screen, a Dominion cruiser loomed, weapons brightening. Captain Morgan's voice continued. "We are not firing. We will not fire first. But you will have to move through us." Amina watched, chest tight, not with fear, but recognition. Discipline. The quiet courage of holding a line without permission. A Dominion commander appeared on the feed, mandibles tight. You are obstructing lawful pacification. Morgan nodded once. Then record that you chose to fire. The feed split, multiple angles, multiple systems tuning in. Dock workers. Pilots. Worlds that had learned to listen for cracks in authority. In the tribunal chamber, Vorun's composure fractured. Enough, he hissed. End the transmission. Amina stepped beside the archive dais. Do it, she said softly. And prove you rule by darkness. Vorun stared at her, seeing not a soldier now, but a fulcrum. He turned back to the chamber, forcing his voice steady. The Dominion will not be blackmailed by spectacle. Rhine lifted his staff and struck the stone once. The sound rang like a bell. Then complete the trial, the archivist said. By law. Silence pressed in. From the feeds, a new alert flared. A colony name scrolled across the display. Keth Minor. Nerek's hands clenched. That is my people. Vorun's mouth curved into something almost like regret. Pacification requires examples. Amina felt the weight of it settle. This was the moment they wanted her to break. Rage would justify everything. Despair would end the story. She chose something else. Chancellor, she said, voice carrying without strain. Under ceremony law, the trial of blood may be invoked again. Vorun stiffened. On what grounds? On succession, Amina replied. You assumed authority in session. You issued a violent order under that authority. The chamber stilled. You are not my equal, Vorun said. No, Amina agreed. I'm your witness. Rhine spoke before Vorun could object. The law permits challenge. Amina met Vorun's gaze, unblinking. Face me. Here. Now. Or order that strike and prove the Empire cannot survive its own rules. The feeds multiplied. The human ships held. The Dominion cruisers' weapons dimmed, uncertain. Vorun looked around the chamber, at the watching delegates, the glowing archive, the cameras that no longer belonged to him. For the first time, the future was not scripted. He straightened his armor. So be it, he said. Let the galaxy decide. And across the stars, worlds leaned forward, not to watch violence, but to see whether law could still draw blood from an empire without killing its soul. The chamber was no longer a room. It was a crossroads. The archive lights dimmed to a stark white, stripping the space of ceremony and leaving only stone, law, and those bound by both. Drones reoriented, their lenses steady, impartial. No music. No banners. Even the incense vents shut down, as if the spire itself refused to dress this moment in comfort. Chancellor Vorun Sable stepped onto the central floor. He removed his outer mantle with deliberate care, setting it aside like a relic he no longer needed. Beneath, his armor unfolded, sleek plates sliding into place, energy seams glowing faintly along the spine and joints. Amina Kadim did not armor up. She unclasped the white shoulder plates of her command suit and handed them to Juno, who accepted them without a word. Amina flexed her hands once, feeling gravity, distance, balance. She took one step forward and stopped at the marked ring etched into the stone. Vorun studied her with open disbelief. You intend to fight me like this? I intend to finish this, Amina replied. Archivist Monk Rhine raised his staff. Trial of blood is joined, he announced. Authority stands equal. Outcome binds succession. The words carried farther than sound. Across orbit, human ships held formation. Engines burned hot, unmoving. On the feed, Captain Morgan's face remained calm, eyes never leaving the Dominion cruiser ahead of him. Hold, he said. We're not the first move. Back in the chamber, Vorun smiled thinly. Your people gamble everything on restraint. Amina's eyes never left his. We gamble on discipline. Rhine struck the stone. Begin. Vorun moved first, fast and precise. His armor enhanced momentum, driving a heavy strike toward Amina's center line. She stepped inside the arc, letting the blow skim past her shoulder, the wind of it tugging her hair free. Her counter was simple, a palm to the elbow joint, a heel pivot, a shove that redirected force instead of meeting it. Vorun recovered instantly, spinning, energy flaring along his gauntlet. He swung low, aiming to break her leg. Amina jumped, twisted, landed behind him. The chamber murmured, not in awe, but calculation. This was not spectacle. This was geometry. You can't win, Vorun said, breath steady. You are human. Amina ducked under a backhand and drove her shoulder into his ribs. The impact rattled armor, forced air from his lungs. That's the point. He struck again, faster now, aggression sharpening. Amina retreated 2 steps, then planted her foot against the raised lip of the dais. When Vorun advanced, she shifted sideways, letting his own forward drive pull him off balance. She grabbed his forearm, turned with the motion, and slammed his gauntlet into the stone. Metal shrieked. Vorun snarled and lashed out with his free hand, catching her across the shoulder. Pain flared, hot and immediate. Amina rolled with it, refusing the stumble he expected. Blood marked the floor, hers. The drones zoomed in. Across the feeds, worlds leaned closer. Vorun pressed, sensing advantage. Yield, he said. I will spare your colony. Amina backed toward the ring's edge, breathing hard. She glanced once at the cameras, not for help, but for witness. No, she said. Vorun lunged, committing everything to a killing blow. Amina stepped forward. She caught his armored wrist with both hands and dropped her weight, pivoting under his center of mass. The motion was brutal and clean. Vorun's momentum carried him over her hip and down. He struck the stone on his back, armor cracking at the spine seam. Before he could recover, Amina was there, knee planted, one hand braced, the other gripping the exposed joint at his throat where armor met flesh. She leaned in close enough for only him to hear. You taught the galaxy how you rule, she said quietly. Now learn how we answer. She twisted. The sound was short. Final. Silence flooded the chamber. Amina stood slowly, chest heaving, blood darkening her sleeve. She looked down once, only once, then stepped back. Archivist Monk Rhine raised his staff with shaking hands. By trial of blood, he said, voice echoing, authority is forfeit. Succession is null. The Crown Dominion stands, unbound. The word landed like a fracture line. In orbit, the Dominion cruiser's weapons powered down. Captain Morgan exhaled. All ships, he said, hold position. Cheers erupted across civilian channels, not roaring, but stunned, disbelieving. Dockworkers embraced. Traders laughed through tears. On Keth Minor, warning sirens fell silent. In the chamber, delegates rose, not in unison, but in waves. Some bowed their heads. Others simply watched Amina, as if recalibrating what power looked like. Narek approached her slowly. My world will remember this, he said. Amina nodded. Make it mean something. Vorun's body was removed without ceremony. No crown replaced him. Hours later, the spire reconvened, not as theatre, but as work. Charters were drafted. Emergency councils formed. Treaties rewritten under eyes that no longer feared interruption. When an aide suggested Amina assume interim authority, she shook her head. Humans didn't come to inherit your throne, she said. We came to end the need for it. Rhine inclined his head deeply. Then what do you ask? Amina looked around the chamber, at the scars in the stone, the cameras still watching, the delegates learning how to breathe without permission. Rules without ritual violence, she said. Law without humiliation. And one truth recorded clearly. She touched the fading bruise on her cheek. No one gets to rule by laying hands on another and calling it order. Later, as the lights shifted from imperial blue to neutral white, Juno stood beside her at the viewport. You okay? She asked. Amina watched ships disperse, not fleeing, not attacking, choosing. Ask me tomorrow. Juno smiled. You just broke an empire. Amina shook her head gently. No. I reminded it what laws are for. Beyond the glass, the stars held steady. And for the first time in generations, they didn't look owned.